Welcome to the Selling in the Motor Trade podcast, in association with Simco Training. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett. Now, some of you probably already know me as Skippy. I would start by saying thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Hi, welcome to another episode of Selling in the Motor Trade. Today continues our educational series, and we're going to continue the path of a service advisor. I'm joined with Darren Bedford again. Darren, how are you today?
Yeah, really good, Simon. Thank you. Really good.
So, Darren, this is number 2 in the series, and it might help if you just go through the 5 different steps that we're talking about in this series, because some people may have missed the first one. Can you run through the 5 steps?
Yeah, sure. We're scratching the surface on these, but we're covering various little parts of what we call the 5 key touch points. So we're looking at last time pre-calls, and that's centered around booking calls and pre-calls, and those 2 in that collection. This one today, we're going to do the morning drop-off, which is fairly logical. That's the next thing that happens after we've taken a booking from a customer. The third one that we'll do will be the vehicle health check call, and so that's where we're catching up with the customer. And fourth one is we're going to end up looking at the handback to the customer, the handover, as we call it. And then the final one is the follow-up of some sort of fashion. So they're what we would call the 5 key touch points, and just as a refresher, they're the things that would influence a customer's view of whether the service that they received was good, and whether they're happy, whether they've seen value for money in their purchases. So
again, if you're just coming to this episode here, number 2, go back and have a look at number 1, the pre-call. Darren talks lots about how when things go wrong, it's often because the pre-call hasn't been done right. Now, again, it's not just a pre-call. Some businesses out there, you have a call center that takes all the bookings. Some service advisors have to do it themselves, though. And these are just snippets from our Selling Today's Service Advisor program that Darren runs for Simco Training. So let's get into the meat of this one. We're dropping the car off in the morning. I want to start off with a question, actually. The service advisor, do they get involved with the customer in the morning? Or these days, we've got more and more of these automated drop-off systems where you just put your details in, you drop the keys in, you get the key for the loan car. It does the upsell there. Must make it a lot quicker for dealing with customers. This drop-off session, is it still relevant?
Yeah, I think very much so, Simon. I think like most of what we work on, it's the people-to-people side of our business that always comes true in the end. I think what I would paraphrase that with is if you have a kind of sterile system or a sterile way of greeting your customers and there's no event to what they're doing, then of course it does streamline it. And you've only got to look at the supermarkets as a comparator there. We've all now ended up in a supermarket where we're scanning our own goods and our own bits and pieces going through there. I've seen a big rise in the amount of places where they're getting back people on the tills. I've also seen them doing a lot more to engage with the customers when they're on the tills. But actually, only the other week, there was a really good example that underpins exactly what I'm saying. It might work for me to go in, drop the keys off, get out of there, perceiving that I get out of there quite quickly and I've speeded up the whole process as a customer. But even as I said to you last week, there was a situation in a Sainsbury's where there was a problem, and it was that time of night when all the yellow stickers come out. There's all the people sort of picking up bargains as they've gone around the shop. But the computer system wasn't recognizing anything that was reduced. So what you then ended up having was this huge chaotic situation at those self-service tills where people couldn't scan their own shopping. They're all waiting on the one person who was whizzing up and down, having to override it. People had 10 or 15 items in some instances, so they actually needed somebody working with them on all of those items to get them through. And you have people, I won't repeat some of the colourful language that was being used.
I can imagine.
People walking out and just leaving their basket of 3 or 4 items at the shopping just because the chaos that ensued around it. So, I know you always talk about this in your courses, but it's that effect in terms of what that human creates within that environment is part of it. But what we really want is somebody there when something goes wrong to be able to deal with it. So I think the destiny's in our own hands. If we just make it a sterile experience, then the computer might work. It might give them that benefit. It might even give them that perceived speed of operation, but actually a really good service advisor can make that experience fun, can make it interesting for the customer when they come in, can be equally as quick, can be a lot more informative, and at the end of the day you're turning people into customers for life if you do it properly.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because they are popping up everywhere now, and I get why they're popping up. And I suppose from my experience, it's like you and I, we travel a lot on airplanes, and you used to go and check in and go and speak to someone. Now there's the self check-in, you drop your bag in and it comes out there. Now that I know how it works, I'll always do that because I'm on an airplane once every 2 weeks minimum, and I just want to go straight there. However, there's always Mr. and Mrs. customer that are going on their once a year journey to see their kids. They're flying to Dublin to see their kids or something like that, and they just can't get it to work, and it causes that frustration. And you get the good airlines, the dare I say it, the Aer Lingus of the world. They always have people floating around there to pick them up and take them through straight away. You have, dare I say it, some of the airlines that might be a bit low cost. It's like tough. Can't work it out. That sounds like a personal problem almost. So I think these systems, if you're a service advisor listening to this and you've got one of these systems, okay, please keep an eye on them. Okay. And the other thing I would say is something I learned from them, these systems where they ask, would you like the car washed? Would you want a 1 litre top up of oil? Would you want the air conditioning service? It's amazing how much just a customer reading it says, go on then, I'll do that. So one thing I've learned from those systems is do service advisors actually offer everything every single time? Yeah.
That's what you get with a computer, isn't it? You get 100% of the products offered to 100% of the people 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And it's a numbers game there afterwards, because there will be people that go, yeah, actually put that in. That's a good idea. Do you know what? Last time I was driving down the road, I had to find somewhere to buy that 1 litre top up of oil. If you don't ask that question, you'll convert 100% of nothing, won't you? So no, it's very important.
So we're going to focus on the service advisor where they're dropping off, and I'm sure you're going to talk about setting the agenda and talking about the vehicle health check and what's going to happen. But I will come back to this. I also want to get your views on if someone has got these systems, how do they set the agenda on the vehicle health check, and when's the best time to do it? So maybe it's good if we go through exactly how they set the agenda, and then I'll get your views on what they should do if they have one of these automated systems out there. But again, the questions I get all the time, speaking to a service advisor, is what's a good number of people for a service advisor to see every day? Should they be seeing 20 people a day? Hopefully that's a no. Okay, should they be seeing 2 people a day? What's the right number? Can you answer that easily? Because that's the question gets thrown at us all the time, normally by the overworked service advisor, I might say.
Yeah, absolutely right, Simon. And I can kind of understand it, and I certainly concur with it. It is a favourite question. Well, what's the number of people that I should be seeing? Because, the other day I had 14 or whatever. In short, there's no simple answer, because different people set up in different ways. Some people have booking centres, so that's completely removed from the service advisor's work. It depends on the number of service advisors that you have as well. I often think that if it's one service advisor that's greeting people in the morning pretty much all the time, then it's probably easier to handle a larger volume. When there's 2, you then want a lot of interaction and communication between them so that everybody's updated and there's a lot more systems and processes in place. It's going to involve a lot more teamwork, for want of a better description. And then that goes up again and again as you add in more 3, 4, 5 service advisor. The level becomes more robust systems and more processes that can make sure everybody's doing the same thing. So it's a little bit difficult to ask, but I suppose fundamentally, this is the point that I always come back to as far as what sets the busyness of that site. And
Mhm.
if we just looked at, say, two service departments, and let's say, for instance, they both have to achieve 40 hours a day. That's their plan. That's what they're hoping to achieve. This is really simple maths, and I don't mean it to be that way, but if each of those vehicles was in your workshops for an hour, okay, so if you've got 40 hours to sell and you've got a vehicle that's in there on average for an hour, each of your vehicles, then you'd need to see 40 vehicles. Yeah, makes sense. 40 hours to invoice out. Bearing in mind that, a lot of the cars now, when they come through, don't even get an hour for a service. The first service on a car is less than an hour. Often small repairs, those sorts of things come into the equation. So actually an hour is quite, it might seem like it's a small amount, but it's quite difficult to achieve, even to sometimes for some manufacturers to get to that time period. Look at it a slightly different way, though. If you move that from 1 hour so that you saw those vehicles actually for 2 hours, each vehicle came in, it was on the ramps, and you were able to invoice 2 hours off against that car. How many cars do you need to see now?
Be half the
Dead
number.
simple. It's half, yeah. And the one question I'd ask you then is, who's got the busiest role in those dealerships? Who's the person that, if you've got 40 cars coming in, okay, your daily function becomes managing what's going on a day, in the moment and in the moment only. If you slow that whole operation to the point that you're actually booking it sensibly, you're contacting people about items that need to be done on their car, you're looking for things that may need to be done at that particular time, things like air conditioning, brake fluid changes, depends on your manufacturer how they work, other functions that you do, you're keeping that vehicle for longer. You're also building into your work schedule some time to do the upsell work that you actually get during the course of the day. If you get that work done, it just makes your whole efficiency go through the roof. So it's often the busier places are actually as a result of not spending the time on the preparation and the planning and the bits we were talking about last time, that then create this wheel. And unfortunately, it's a bit like one of those hamster wheels. The faster you run on it, the faster it's going to go. You've got to actually step off that to stop the thing. Running faster and faster and faster won't help. Because I'll give you a prime example, Simon. How many times have we seen where we speak to a person and we're getting a vehicle health check back at 4 o'clock in the afternoon? Well, my argument there is you're going to then go out to the technician and go, great news, they want the brakes. Oh, that's no good. I've already put the car back outside. It's all boxed up. You'll have to rebook them and get them back in. So we now compound the issue because we rebook that car back in for a small repair, again, down the road, down the track, 3 or 4 days later or whatever it is to get that repair sorted out. Our efficiency comes through the speed of operations within that department. If we don't have that, we end up in a situation where the work that comes into us just ends up stacking up, and it's sorry to keep using these analogies, but it's a bit like that production line that just keeps delivering pizzas or whatever past you, and they just the quality goes down and down and down because of the speed of them. Eventually they all fall off the end.
Well, we're talking about red and amber upsell, and so often service departments, they're too busy to do it, because that's exactly what you're talking about. They've got the car in there an hour. Okay, it's got to get in, it's got to go out. We've got to get the loan car. We've got to phone the customer. You just haven't got time to do it. Slow it down. Find more work. Keep it on the ramp for longer. So it's going to be on the work longer because you're finding more work. It is really chicken and egg, though, isn't it?
I mean, I think it's worth saying, I'm not talking about go looking for work that doesn't need to be done. I want to make that 100% clear. What I'm talking about, though, is we've maybe had their previous vehicle health check. So we can have a look at that previous vehicle health check to see if there might be some things on there that may need doing this time around. We know that vehicle may be booked in for a repair, but is that the right repair? Particularly if it's a booking centre, sometimes they might book in a service, but when we have a look at it, it should be a B service or whatever. There might be things on top of that your company offer that you could get that vehicle done while that car's in as well. Even down to accessories and things like that. How many times have we talked about the person who buys a car and then goes and gets a set of mats from an independent or something like that. It depends on your own setup and your own systems that you have in place. But there's a wealth of items that we could be fitting to those vehicles: dog guards, tow bars, those sorts of things. All of which is, while that vehicle's in with us, just gives us an opportunity.
Okay. So also from your course, you talk lots about the importance of video. And I don't think anyone listening to this would think that video isn't a real important part of a modern service department. But do we really want it dominating the conversation at the drop-off?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Simon. It's one of those that I think, we often hear in the roles that it's about spinning plates. And of course, the new plate that comes along, we put some effort behind it and we're spinning that plate whilst perhaps, taking for granted some of the stuff that's in place for us. I look at video like this. It's a fantastic tool. Okay. It's brilliant for backing up what you say. It's certainly a picture paints 1,000 words, in terms of sometimes if you're explaining to a customer, but you can actually show them something that is a whole heap more visual and helps the person understand perhaps what that repair is. But video is this. Some people will watch video. Not everybody will. Some people will watch it multiple times, at strange hours of the night, 10 o'clock in the evening, 10 times. We can't control it. We can't legislate for it. What I do know is very little of the video is actually watched within what I would call the golden hour, the sufficient time for that decision to be made to give your technician the approval to go on and get that work done. Okay, so we should bear that in mind. It's a tool for us as a service advisor to use when we have that conversation. And the reason why I'm stressing that is this. What I've found is a lot of people have dropped off the importance of the vehicle health check. Okay, and we would always do on the course a restatement of those. If you think about the 5 key touch points that we've talked about, what's coming next is later on, I'm going to be phoning this customer to talk them through the work that needs doing on their car. So I'm going to want to make sure that I explain fully how our process works and how easy it is for the customer to make a decision. So my morning drop-off would be, hey, listen, Simon, while your car's in with us today, we're going to complete a complimentary vehicle health check. Listen, most of those items I'm sure are going to be in green. They'll be good to go. If there are any amber items, what we're doing is we're letting you know that they might not make it to the next service. But listen, any of those red items, I'll be straight on the phone because we need to get those sorted out for you today. And the reason why we leave that statement is multifaceted. It will be one of the last things that I leave in the customer's mind. I'm obviously going to follow it up with a vehicle health check and I'm going to use the same lines. But what I'm clearly doing is telling the customer how the process that we use to evaluate the work, how simple the system is and how easy it is for them to be able to prioritize what needs doing. So if I leave that clear explanation, I'm not expecting the customer to remember it, but it means when I do pick up the phone and I speak to them later, I can bring those pictures back again. And of course, using the color, we all think pictorially. We don't, see the words written down, oh, amber. What we do is a little bit of amber flashes into our head. When we say green, a little bit of green, red, it all conjures up in the back of the mind. Okay, I can see how this method works. Lead on a positive. Hey, listen, most of your items are going to be green. They're good to go. We build some trust in the amber. Hey, listen, if there's any amber items, what we're doing is we're just advising you that they might not make it to the service, but the ones we really do need to sort out, they're your red ones. Now, of course, nobody's going to have an issue at that stage because they've not got any red work on their car, but they clearly understand how the system works. I have had, sorry.
Yeah, I know I'm asking you to do your 2-day today's service advisor training course with all the follow-up in like a half an hour little bit here, but for a service advisor listen to this, would you just run through the drop-off there again? What are you actually going to do? So they drop in the car, if they come and speak to them, just bullet point some of the things they're going to do there. Just
and again, it depends on your processes, the systems that are in place. But when I've done this on the course with people, we normally come up with about 20 operations that we need to run through, with that particular customer. For anything from sort of taking the details down of the car to loan car informations to seeing driving licenses, all of those factual things that kind of have to be done there. And he's going to vary for each of your customers, which obviously, again, makes it a somewhat of a slightly difficult task. And that's why I would recommend that what we actually did was get down on paper what we want good to look like. What do we want to cover at that morning drop off? And then start using those as cribs to make sure that you're doing it with every single customer, every single time without fail. And the reason why that's so important is this: I can guarantee you the one that you don't do it with will be the one that blows up in your face. It's if you don't explain the payment methods to somebody, maybe at drop off, that's going to be the one that causes you a problem potentially later on. But in terms of the actual drop off, what I would tend to do is go through all of the kind of bits and pieces that you'd need to do, the routine stuff and all of those items that you might be expected to do. But I'd always leave that customer right at the very end by and I'll just run through exactly the same thing. Hey, listen, Simon, while your car's in with us today, we'll complete a complimentary vehicle health check. It's dead simple. Works on a traffic light basis. If there's any, there should be, most of your items should be green. They're good to go. If there's any amber items, what we're doing is we're letting you know that they might not make it to the next service. But hey, listen, if there's any red, I'll be straight on the phone because we need to get those sorted out for you. Now, there is a finish to that, which I'll touch on later, that will also help make sure that you can get back in contact with those individuals and things like that. But, in essence, that's a quality kind of explanation of how the day is going to run, because that car's going to go in and that vehicle health check should be back with the service advisor, not when the car's nearly finished, not while the oil's being dropped, not while the car's done and boxed up and put back outside, but it needs to be done the minute that car comes in, and it needs to be back with the service advisor. In my world, if we could have a big clock on the roof of each car ticking with that hour ticking away, it'd be really interesting because, we've got the technician's time. Let's give him 10 minutes to get that done. Then it goes perhaps through to parts for them to put the parts on there. Well, let's give them 20 minutes to get it done. Then it comes back to the service advisor to get in contact with the customer. Let's give them 20 minutes because we're not going to be able to drop everything and dive straight onto it. You're already talking about there 40 to 50 minutes of that hour. So that before you're in a position where somebody's actually talking to a customer to get the go ahead, what you've got to look at is anything past that is affecting your efficiency of your technician standing around. Efficiency and morale. What technician wants to be standing there going, are they going to approve it? Aren't they going to approve it? Oh, do you know what? Let's put it back together again, and only to find out that we did actually manage to upsell on this one.
Well, what about time-bound stuff like air conditioning service? When you're building that into your drop-off, or are you doing an air conditioning service at the pre-call? Are you doing it at the drop-off, or are you doing that on the vehicle health check call?
No, that's a great question, and I'll tell you where most of them take place. In my experience, they generally happen as part of the vehicle health check. They don't need to. I would certainly, at morning drop-off, that would be the point I would be explaining that to each and every customer. It's worth noting now as well, we don't just do that in the summer months. I know we're coming into Decembers and things like that, but it's an all year round operation. If that car's over 2 years old, then it needs doing, but it's a time-bound operation. Okay, which means that you don't need Andy, your technician, to specify that it needs doing. And of course, by handling that up front, okay, and you either put that into your bookings process or you maybe put it into your drop-off process where you have that conversation. That's, again, another great way to increase the time that vehicle is going to be on your ramps. Because if you have the conversation there and then and the customer says yes, the other thing about it is that operation is giving you more time with on the ramps. Your technicians is a lot more productive because that could be whirring away while he's completing the work. But also the other part of it is it's never going to be sacrificed. And what I mean by that is I've seen situations where service advisors phoned up and said, you've got a problem with your brakes and your air conditioning, and customers virtually about to say yes to an air conditioning service and then goes, oh, well, if the brakes need doing, do the brakes, leave the aircon. Well, the aircon's no less important just because the brakes need doing. So again, if we put that in and we've got that work up front, then we stand the chance of getting both of those repairs as well.
I just absolutely love the air conditioning because, of course, we're plugging the machine in, letting it do its magic while the technician's getting onto other parts of it. And there's
Yeah,
nothing worse than my bugbear, and you've been there, is when the vehicle health check is coming through after the job's been done. Okay. And the service, and the customer says, yep, get the tires done, get the air conditioning serviced. Yeah, I'll do all that. And of course, what's the tech doing? Finding the car, getting it back on the ramp. It's why it's on the ramp. The efficiency is
it's even a great example there, Simon, of the air conditioning. Imagine that that car's got an hour service. You've got your hour clocks ticked away. Okay, and all it needs is an air conditioning service. But Andy, our techs, highlighted that to us. So we've then contacted the customer and sold that air conditioning. All looks positive on the upside of it. But here's the negative. Okay, it's then going to have to be with Andy stood over it while the machines were in a way doing all of its tricks, and he's not actually going to be able to do anything else while that's happening. Whereas actually, if that was done right at the booking process or done at the drop-off process, he'd be able to incorporate that within the work. So it just becomes more efficient as an individual. So, these are the little things that will move that needle, move those bookings. We might not go from 1 hour to 2 hours, but we can certainly move that up some degrees.
I also noticed from your guide that because you give everyone a guide when they go through, and these are the things they should do on those 5 touch points there. And something that it just springs to mind there is the best method to reach you today. It's not just, and your phone number is, and your email address. I suppose it's the method to contact this morning, isn't it?
This morning is definitely the way to do it. Okay, what you don't want to do is shoot yourself in the foot if you're not getting these back through. But if you're not, I'd urge you to speak with your manager and say, we need to sort this out, because until they come through and they are treated with the importance that they are, that they have, then your efficiency will never evolve. But yeah, that came out of it, and we've all been there. That if we don't have a process that we're working to, morning drop off. All right, Simon, I've got you. Let me just check your email. Your email, Simon at, yeah, okay, fantastic. Your mobile number is, yeah, okay, your mobile number, right, fine, see you, bye. Off Simon goes. I guess it's even more important these days, because if you've spoken to them once on a particular number, there's no guarantee that it wasn't a day that they were working from home, or it's a they have hybrid roles, all these different things that go on these days. You can't assume that that's going to be the best way to contact that individual, even if you've got previous experience. So we changed all that checking the addresses to, hey, listen, we're going to need to get hold of you. What's the best method? And that, again, it just ties in with the vehicle health check. So we finish off the vehicle health check explanation. On that point, if there is any red work, Simon, what is the best method to get hold of you this morning on? Because if Simon can't take a call at work, he might be able to say, well, actually, I can't take a call, but if you text me, I'll be all right, because I'm in a meeting and I'll do it below the Zoom line. Okay. It might be that he has to say, do you know what? I can't take a call, do a text, or see emails because I'm tied up all day. In which case, you can at that point arrange with somebody, the plan that if there is anything, who do I now then need to speak to? And again, what you're preventing there is a log jam of people that we've got a vehicle health check completed for, but we can't actually get back to them. So it's these little things that make the difference, move the needle. And you remember I was saying to you, Simon, in the last session, and this is fundamentally where it comes from, is this: if you don't start to take those little actions, what does happen in your environment is things go wrong. And when things go wrong, you have to find the time to put them right. Yeah. You have to get that manager involved. You have to go and collect that customer's car. You have to get an extra clean done on it. You have to almost wet nurse that one customer's car through the system to ensure nothing happens, because we're now in the hands of the gods, that if it's something's gone wrong with them once, there's a high probability that something else totally beyond your control may well happen as well. God's so it's really important. Yeah, absolutely.
And this is where it's I just want to reiterate how all of these 5 touch points touch in together, because you're needing time to do all this. And on the pre-call, if you haven't made sure they're coming in at 8:45 or 9 o'clock or 9:15, this is where you might have 3 or 4 people deep waiting for you. And of course, the poor service advisor is rushing through this and not doing it properly. So they really do it. So many times we get service managers that just help us with upsell. just help us
Yeah.
with net promoter scores. But
Yeah.
actually, you've got to get all the touch points right, haven't you?
You absolutely do. You absolutely do. And the other thing I think only fair to point out, we're scratching the surface on the content of what we go into in these short sort of sound bites that we're doing here. So there are things that we won't necessarily mention that we would do at drop off. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's just a pointer as to some of the ways that you can streamline your systems and usual kind of pitfalls from all the courses that we've run that give us that kind of these are some of the common issues, because the problem that you have is if you don't have your systems in place, the rarity of each of those incidents that can happen mean that we don't necessarily draw conclusions that we need to do something about it, a particular area, because, it was 3 weeks ago, the same problem happened. So therefore we don't think it's necessarily that important. But again, I'd highlight another thing, and that's that what we do know is lots of your customers out there won't always tell you if there's a problem. So, if you've been told that it's a problem once or even twice, then there's a good chance there's others out there that have fallen in exactly the same category. Just because you haven't heard from it doesn't necessarily mean it's not something worth looking at and just changing. There's loads of information out there these days. Customers are surveyed by Google, they're surveyed by the manufacturers, all those sorts of things. But there's very little that pulls all that together. I'd just say anything that's raised as an issue, look how you can improve it. Because if you've got strong systems, you can start to build stuff in there to improve that naturally.
I'm going to have a little bit of a bet with you now. So with the 5 touch points, we talk about the pre-call, okay, or taking the booking, depending on the business. This is the drop-off in the morning. Our next one is the vehicle health check, called the actual upsell call. With these podcasts, we have so much data. I almost bet so many people go straight to number 3 and like, how do I get the guys to do the red and amber work? We need more upsell. Do you think that's what's going to happen? Now, if that is the people have gone straight to it, I urge them to come back and listen to these 2 first. You've got to get the pre-call. You're going to get the drop-off right if you're going to have any chance of getting the upsell bit of it right.
Yeah, and I mean, I know it's as cliched as anything, but unless you've opened something up properly, you've got no chance of closing that. And it's the same in sales world. How many times you're often asked to go in and help somebody on closing and bits and pieces like that. It's seldom actually in that area, because actually, if you do a really good job, then the close almost becomes natural. It just becomes that kind of, well, why wouldn't I go ahead and do it? It's just that logical. So it's, the part where it's often gone wrong is actually the early parts of that process.
Something you haven't talked about today. I know it's for time there, but I suppose we'll shoehorn it into the end. I know you always like to have the vehicle health check laminated on the service advisor's desk so they can point out it's going to look just like this. There'll be 3 different colors there. Some people, I just want to get your views on why that could help the service advisor.
Do you know what it's more to do with? It's more as an aid memoir, funnily enough, to the service advisor as much as it is to the customer. The customer benefits from that information. Funnily enough, on a course once, I had somebody say to me about the vehicle health check, saying, wow, customers have seen vehicle health checks. They know what they look like. They've been around for years. Okay. And probably somebody who invented it, I would imagine, that came out there. But
you met the guy once, didn't you, who invented it?
Yeah, I've met a few people that were responsible for vehicle health checks in my time. Yeah, none of them the same person, but a few people.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, principally they have been around for ages. But my kind of comment with that was, well, look, I go to the dentist, every 12 months if I'm lucky, 6 months if I'm not, and they shout out all these commands, and somebody diligently writes it down and all. I've been doing that for many, many years, and I still haven't got a clue what's going on. This is your domain, and this is how your systems and your processes work. And the vehicle health check underpins all of that. Clarity in that area is a huge part of it. I don't want to go too much into that because we're going to, we'll do that next session. But, the amount of times I hear a service advisor give out conflicting information with things like, oh, Simon, you've got a couple of tyres there, they're in amber, so we'd recommend you do something about that in the near future. But also, Andy, our technicians, recommended that you get that air conditioning service done. He's advised that needs doing. Well, if you start using the same words, advise as amber, advise as red, what I often talk about is you end up with like a muddy brown colour. Keep it clear how it works. Red is stuff that needs doing today. Okay. It doesn't mean because you put it in red that you're spending that customer's money, because the customer still has the choice to make the decision. But you're the professional, you're the expert in this. In your opinion, or your technician's opinion, which is what these people have paid for, that needs doing today. And it's as simple as that, really. What complicates it is we kind of put in their language that kind of takes down the importance of it. And as as you know all too well, the body language is often a lot of what the customer picks up on and think, well, if they don't think it's that important, I do something, quickly, then I'm all right. One of them that springs to mind is the tyre situation there. How many times we've had people, phone up and say, Mr. Customer, your tyre, it's currently at 2.6 millimetre. And the customer says, well, what's the legal limit? Well, 1.6 millimetres. Oh, okay, I've got plenty of time then, haven't I? As a service advisor, I've got nowhere to go with that. But actually, get your tyre depth gauge out and look how thick a millimetre is. Just set your tyre depth gauge to a millimetre and look at how much notice you're giving that customer. We dilute the message with some of our languages I'm making.
Well, listen, let's talk about that call on the next one of these sessions there. So listen, if people want some of your tips and ideas there, the best way is to reach out at Darren.Bedford at Simco Training or LinkedIn. We've got cheat sheets. We've got lots of stuff there that they're welcome to. Listen,
absolutely, yeah.
So on the next in the series there, which comes out, is going to be all about the vehicle health check, the call, the upsell call. And again, I think there's lots of people going to dive straight into that one. So if you haven't heard that one yet, well done. I'm impressed. Okay, and we'll see you next time, Darren.
Great. Thanks very much, Simon.
That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, simcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn. Thank you.